That's right. Now is the right time to change your life. Welcome back to another episode of Man versus Marriage. It is I, your humble servant, Quincy Moran, aka the Q Dog, aka the Q Diggity Dog, in the Moran family studio with my lovely wife, Jeannie Moran. Jeannie, tell the people who you are and what you do.
I'm Jeannie Moran, and I'm your wife. I manage the house. What did we call it? The ringmaster of the circus and the children's.
Yep. Anything else?
Nah.
All right, cool. Well, we are glad that you're here. We're here to talk about where do I start? One of the most downloaded categories of episodes that we do, probably number one. It is number one. I don't have to say probably because I tallied it all up. Where do I start? And so we're giving you a 3-part series on where to start. And this one is about accountability, which is a naughty word to some people, maybe a naughty word to you. But actually, it's not a naughty word. Now, if you are new to the program and you're asking yourself, who are these people and why should I listen to them? Here's a little story I got to tell about a couple called the Morans that you may not know that well. Boom. That was good. Come on. You say it in your head now. All right. So
Actually, I had Fresh Prince in my head. But go ahead.
this is a story all about how.
Exactly.
So we are the Morans. We have just celebrated 25 years of marriage, a quarter of a century. I don't know where all that time has gone. We met babysitting, which is pretty funny. We were both told that we couldn't have kids. Lo and behold,
we have 8.
they were wrong because we have 8 children. For me, they called and said that I wasn't. I was
You were shooting blanks.
Okay, I was shooting blanks, and then they called back 30 minutes later and said, "I'm sorry, we read the wrong test." That was a bittersweet moment because there was another guy who got a call and probably had to get a second call, which was terrible. But we had a boy. We had a baby eats a boy. You're about to do that, weren't you? Yeah, that shows our age. And then we had triplet girls, and then we had another girl, then we had twin girls, and then we had our final child, which is a girl. So the tally is boys 1, girls 7.
He was not shooting blanks. He was shooting mostly females.
That's right. Pow, pow, pow. So with that being said, it at about the 10-year mark in our marriage, we had 7 kids under the age of 6.
Roughly.
Yeah, it's right around there somewhere. I need to get the details.
He's 01 and she's 07. So yeah.
Yep, there you have it. And so during that time, during that first 10 years of our marriage, not only did we have children, multiples, we had multiple diagnoses of autism in our family. So that creates another layer. A couple of our girls that were born premature had multiple surgeries, brain surgeries, shunt revisions, etc. There were medical emergencies. It seemed like all the time in those 10 years. Well, we discovered that our children had been being sexually molested by babysitters. Yet another difficulty in circumstance. We were in financial duress, which is probably a part of early parenting for the most part. But we were on the path to losing our house, and we were eating out of a food bank. So thank God for churches that supply food to people in need locally, because we had to survive off of it. And it was during those times that we were just fighting to stay afloat. Like we were in full survival mode, and we were not connecting like we wanted to. We were not having sex like we wanted to. We were not communicating like we wanted to because we were busy surviving.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was at that point where it's like, are we going to continue on in roommates just doing what we're doing? Or are we going to look at the vows we made and make this marriage what we envisioned it to be or better? And we chose the latter. And so fast forward 10 years, decided to start a podcast because the impact of this change was so great in my life that I'm like, who the heck doesn't want to know about this? Let me go tell other guys about what difference this can make. And, so we started the podcast. Now we're on year 6 and 320 plus episodes for you that take our journey, listener email, and then series based around the tools that Coach Rita taught us so that you can make your marriage better or you can make it great again. And I love that we have taken that on and it is a part of our journey. So I want you to know this as we get started. If you connect with any of those things, you are here, you're in the right place, and you belong here. And we're going to help you achieve those things that you and your wife or you and your husband want for your relationship. Now, we're also going to be putting out a guide called the Man versus Marriage Guide to a Great Marriage. And if you want to get your hands on that, it's going to be free. Then I need you to send me an email. So when I drop that, I can let you know that it is available. And the email is Quincy at mvsmpodcast.com. Yep. And it should be on the bottom of your screen right now. Email us today, Quincy at mvsmpodcast.com. So there it is. Now, let's get into this. I anticipate this episode being shorter than the first 2 because we've covered many of these aspects of taking responsibility, personal responsibility, focusing on the things that you can affect, awareness. And when you get down to accountability, we've kind of covered many of these things, but I'm going to turn it over to you, honey, so that you have the opportunity to talk about accountability. What does it look like to you? Because that is the question we have to ask ourselves anytime we're communicating or we're starting something new or we're expressing how we feel. What does it look like? Because I don't want to guess what you mean. I want you to tell me what you mean.
Well, I'm thinking about it. There's actually a few ways you can do this. Quincy and I are further along in this journey. So our process is we've given each other permission to hold each other accountable. There are buzzwords that we use. There are times when maybe we'll kind of nudge each other and say, hey, not at the moment, but we need to talk about this later, to let the other one know, something wasn't right. Or in the instance when our daughter moved back home, I had to give Quincy permission to say, look, I'm struggling with this. I need you to let me know if I'm getting off the rails or if I'm saying something in a certain tone. I need you to pull me back and let me know so that I can catch myself, because sometimes I don't, when it's, especially in an emotional situation. Some people like to keep journals. We have one listener that we help, and when there is a situation where maybe it's being pointed out that he's not doing X, Y, or Z, we've had him write a journal on the things that you are doing. Keep track in the journal at the end of the day. What did you do? Were there things that you missed? Can you do better? And that's his own personal journal for himself. But it's also something that he can go back to, in not to throw it at his spouse or anything like that. But if it comes up that you didn't do X, Y, or Z, well, if I was to look back at my journal, I remember doing it on this day or that day, but it also gives him something to go back to and go, ooh, I didn't write that down that day. You're right. I did miss that, and make it right. While you're learning, that's one process to do it. Quincy does it with his, with the gym. It's a way to keep track of his exercises and what he's done and, what his progress is. I look at it that way. Whatever works for you to track what you're doing. Now, for us, it was, this is going to be depend on where your relationship is, really, because if you are not in a position that you can take a critical word from your spouse in any way, shape, or form, your spouse should not be the one holding you accountable. Simply put, Quincy and I had to give each other permission from the get-go. This was homework from Rita. Quincy, if she does this, you're going to say X, Y, Z. And then I was asked, do you give him permission? Once permission is granted, that's that. Now you can revoke it, but you cannot get mad at him. If you give him permission to say something or to correct something, you cannot get mad. Same on the flip side, guys. If you give her permission and you say, look, I'm trying really hard to make an effort to change this. If I miss or if I'm not hitting the bar, would you please let me know? Nicely.
Well, it's in the idea is that it's in good faith and you're not using this
You're not
mechanism
abusing it.
to manipulate anybody and you're not abusing it as well.
It's also a way to help you build your own internal credibility, because now you're seeing that you can be trusted. You can trust yourself to do what's right, to stay on track with what it is that you've made plans and intentions to do. Like I said, with working out, the way that the program we were involved with worked is we tracked our food, we tracked all of our workouts, we tracked our water. So at the end of the week, when we did our weigh in, we could go back, and if you went up or you went down, you could look at it and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work. It's the same concept, but it's also a way for you to track for yourself that you can trust yourself to come through on something.
Yeah, it's really the foundation that Jeannie mentioned is, or excuse me, the principle that Jeannie mentioned is foundational to accountability. And what did she mention? Maybe you heard it in passing, but it's something I developed called internal credibility. Because you, in order to trust other people and to allow them the privilege to hold you accountable, you have to first become someone that you can count on.
Mm-hmm.
And I use this as an exercise to locate the guys that I coach because I want to know if there's someone that they can trust. I do something really simple. And because I'm a part of the KISS principle, keep it super simple. Kiss it, keep it super simple. And that is, no matter what, for the next 30 days, do 20 push-ups every day, no matter what. Now, the first check-in, guys usually can get it right 3, 4, 5 days in a row. But then after that, you start to hear the little excuses on
I went to bed late.
whatever.
We had a busy day.
Yeah, whatever it is. I got distracted. I mean, rarely do I hear, crap, man, I just totally forgot. But you'll hear the excuses. And the fact is that you need practice making promises to yourself and keeping promises to yourself, because that facilitates you being able to count on you. And that's why you start things that you don't finish. That's why you say things that you don't do, because you don't trust yourself. Now, you might be like me and be an over planner and plan too many things, and that might be the reason that you don't get as many things done as you want. But when it comes down to it, do you trust yourself to follow through? Are you a man that you can count on? Nobody knows your internal dialogue like you do. So if you stood outside of yourself and you looked at yourself and you're like, in my instance, Quincy, would you be somebody that I could count on if I needed you? Would you be somebody who would be true to your word? Are you somebody that would follow? Could I trust you to follow through? Like looking at yourself in the third person. And if the truth is, if the answer is no, you've got some work to do. And that's okay, because you just want to know what the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to dance around it. You don't want to avoid it, because avoiding the hard things, avoiding the truth is what got you where you are. So make it and keep it super simple. Just start slow there, because you will be surprised if you will be pleasantly surprised at how you feel once you keep your own commitments. And then you will know that you can keep your commitments to other people that you make, because you have become someone that you can trust. And I really love my faith. I love that the Holy Spirit is such a great teacher, because Jeannie and I were talking at one point, and we were talking about, what do we do with the kids, and what advice do we give the kids? And I just felt this voice in my spirit say, Quincy, the best advice you can give is to be the example.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's profound. Okay, that's what I will continue to do. That I didn't look at it that way because I would chase people down to help them. And then when they didn't follow through, I felt like the failure. And so I really had to get a reckoning and learn how to develop internal credibility within myself so that I could become a man I could count on, and then others could do the same.
Well, and I look at it this way, just to break it down to something very simple: aim small, miss small. When you're starting this, if you are starting from ground zero and you have been struggling, I still struggle with this, but not as much since we started the books. I'm a person who will start something, I will nose dive into it, go whole heart into it, and then at some point things happen. Things always happen.
Mhm.
Life, scheduling, just things, whatever it is. And eventually I will either postpone or I will quit. And it was that way for 5 years trying to write the book. I had the book. I had a lot of people screw me in the process, but we got the book out. And then the second book came out 3 months later. Both of those were almost 90% done, I would say, before I got to that point. Now I've done book 3 from scratch in under 12 weeks, and it's releasing next month. I've finally gotten myself to a place where I can trust me to finish what I start, and I'm not stutter starting through things. But when I first started, it was do little things. I needed to sit down and write a few words, whatever it was. I just needed to write something. If it was in a journal, if it was on my computer, if it was in the story, if it was research, I had to do something pertaining to the book every day, just something. And if I couldn't get to it, then I doubled up the next day because I couldn't miss it. I had to double up. Same thing works with like when I was working with PJ, and this is putting it to the absolute simplest thing. I had to put in my phone, in my reminders, what time I needed to drink my water.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would forget. I needed to drink X amount of water every day, and it had to be drank before I went to bed at midnight. Didn't matter what time I drank it, but it had to be done before I went to bed or before midnight. Those were my options. So I had to put it in my phone because I would forget. I would get busy. I had things going on. I just didn't think about it. I didn't care. That's what it amounts to, is I just didn't care enough to intentionally purpose for myself, I need to do this, until I put a timer on or put a reminder in my phone to say, hey, you said you would do this, go do this. This is the time you're supposed to do it. And how simple is it? It's water. Quincy did the same thing with check-ins. When we first started doing check-ins, there were reminders in our phone. What are your wife's thoughts about you today? It's still in our calendar, actually. It still runs in mine. Even though we weren't perfect at it, those are the things you need to do. If that's what you have to do to remind yourself, I need to have a date night, I need to do this, or we need to plan it, put it in your phone. My God, when we've all got them in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So why not utilize some of those things to help you? But it also, I want you to get to the point where if you're like me and you start and stop, we need to find out why.
Well, let me jump in there real quick because I want to give you some more game changer information relative to this that helps you. Now, I talked to Jeannie at length because she rewrote her first book
Probably 5 times.
about 5 times, and each time she would go to rewrite it, I would challenge her. We'd be getting an argument. We'd fight about it, and she'd get really upset. But I could see what was going on in her because I had already walked the path. I knew what imposter syndrome was. I knew what the disease of perfection was like and what role that would play in your life. Now, that didn't get her to the finish line. Even though I had already walked the path, I'd already started this podcast, I had already gotten it out. Matter of fact, I'd started 2 podcasts that are still, they're both still going. But it helps to have someone who's ahead of you down the road on this journey to help pull you forward when you need it. And so fast forward, a couple years, Jeannie met a really good friend at a book event. Now, she was able to help Jeannie get this book across the finish line because they developed a level of accountability
Mm-hmm.
between them. And here's the truth is that this lady already had books done.
Mm-hmm.
So where my accountability would come in because I would push her to say, stop changing, stop rewriting. This is what you're doing. And it would cause some trouble, but I was still willing to give that to her. When you add the layer of now someone who has accomplished publishing the book, and then she would talk to me about what said person says, there are many of the very same things that I said, except for this lady had experience accomplishing what it was that Jeannie was seeking to accomplish. So there were two parts of accountability that allowed her to get there. Now, why do I bring that up? Because you're listening to a podcast, and what brought you here is because you want a better relationship. What brought you here is you're looking to do something to accomplish a relationship goal or change it. And you have two people that are here ahead of you in the journey. Very likely. Maybe you're ahead of us. Who knows? What I can tell you in the majority of all the cases when we speak to someone, we're a little farther ahead on the path. So we can tell you what it looks like up here. You still have to walk the path.
Yeah.
But we're here to help you and to provide accountability for people who have already walked the road. And so we are looking ahead. When we turn around to look back at you, now we're saying, hey, this is what you can expect, but keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Keep on going. So that is the benefit that we offer you. We are a journey based podcast. We are a life and relationship experience based podcast. Whereas other podcasts, and there's value in it, those people might have a PhD or a doctorate in some sort. Maybe those are the same thing. They may have formalized training. We are going based on our
Personal experience.
journey, our experience, and what we've done for the past 25 years, and also the fruit that it bears, because that's another thing.
Sorry.
What?
Bad joke. Go ahead. You said fruit. I was thinking something. Never mind. Go ahead. Keep moving.
Oh, now I'm lost and wondering what you were thinking. You could tell me later, I guess. So that's something that is important for you to know, and especially using that true to life example that I did with Jeannie. And I told you in the beginning, she's more than, which is a very big deal, a mother and a homemaker. And she's more than, the CEO of our home, or the COO. I don't know which one it would be, but it would be one of those. But she's also endeavoring to do something using her creativity, and she's a published author now. It helped having someone who had already accomplished that to hold her accountable.
Well, really, I have multiple someones. I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to do. When it comes to writing, I have you who helps me develop the story and helps me stay on top of my storyline. I have the one friend who I send chapters to every time I write one. She goes through it with me and makes sure that I'm staying true to what I'm trying to portray. And then I have an editor who stays on top of me for quality. If my, and she'll tell me if my writing in this section just seems more juvenile than what it normally is, she makes those corrections or makes those mentions for me to go in and fix it. But the thing with the editor is, instead of just telling me follow all this and click on everything except it, she leaves me comments. This is why this doesn't work. This is why you should use this. This is why I changed this sentence because this is what you had. This sounds a little bit better. If you don't want to use it, your choice. The point is, she's teaching me instead of just making the changes or doing it for me. She's giving me options and teaching me how to do better. That's what the accountability is. It's somebody who is echoing what you want based on what you've said. With my editor, I give her specifics. There are several types of editors, several types of editing. There's
Mhm.
about 5, I think. I don't need all 5. I have my character strengths. I know what my characters are. So I tell her, this is what I want from this character. This is what I want from this character. I'm looking for this timeline movement. I'm looking for these emotional connections. That's what she goes for. The grammatical and everything is already included. But these are the things that I'm pinpointing for. And it's her job to find them and say, hey, I don't think this works. I have an 18-year-old character who needs to jump from being a naive sheltered 18-year-old to being a strong-willed coming into her own, but still has that simple naivety to her. She finds those things for me and says, hey, this sounds like she's being a little more mature and cocky than what you want. Do you want this? Same thing in workouts or in getting healthy. Our trainer was PJ. I would tell PJ, these are my goals. I want to lose this much weight. I want to lose this many inches. I want to be able to have this type of definition. PJ makes a plan. I have to track everything, my food, my exercise, my water. I have to take photos. I have to check in every week. And she checks in with me daily. Did you do this? No. If when we get to the weigh-in, if something is off, okay, give me your book. Let me look at what you did this week. That's how she tracks it.
Yeah.
It's all dependent on the level of accountability you want. So if you're coming to Quincy and I and you're saying that you want to do better, you want to learn to communicate better, you want to, I don't know, learn to trust yourself more. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that people have brought to us. What you're asking us to do is give you what we've learned, tell you how we did it, guide you through how we did it. So when you call us and you say, no, you know what? I didn't do it this week. And we answer with, why the hell not? You gave us permission. This is what you're asking us for. If you're not bringing to the table the things that we're asking you to do, we can't help because I can't see what the pattern is. I can't see what the problem is. And if you're coming to us and you don't want the accountability and you don't want the extra input, then I have a question. Why are you here? The accountability is the one of the biggest parts to getting you started. Once we get you started, you'll be able to hold yourself accountable. You won't need us to keep checking in on you. You won't need us to keep guiding you through things. Eventually, you will develop your own tools based off of what we're teaching you.
Yeah, and just to make sure I put a button on that. This is not a platform where you come to so we can tell you that you're right and your spouse is wrong. We're more of a process
Not if you know me well enough. We don't pick sides. There's no point in picking sides. You're coming here for help for yourself.
Well, and we very much use the process that we've been through, and we know that these things, one is dependent upon the next, and so everybody is in a different place. But I don't want to glance over it because it's a part of my life philosophy, and I keep replying or relating back to that. You're hearing a lot of that in this 3-part series, which is my philosophy, my philosophy, my philosophy. Well, before I started this, my personal philosophy, or for you computer guys and gals, my operating system, it was broken. So I was simply working out of habit. And I had to redefine my philosophy on life. What was it about? And then I had to redesign it. So through the process, I had to develop these things within me where if X would come to the gate, I would say, yeah, you can come in, or no, you cannot. And it was mechanisms and things that I would have to say to coach myself. I'm a coach by nature. I was also a football coach and a baseball coach. So I had to develop these things as reminders to me. And through experience, I learned, and this is the point I was getting to, is that accountability is an echo. I'm not coming to you to tell you what I want you to do.
Mm-mm.
I'm coming to you and repeating your words to you because you said, here's what I want.
Well,
So while, just let me finish this
no,
real
you're
quick.
fine.
While people holding you accountable makes you feel like you're being attacked, um, you are in the wrong mindset, because when you ask someone to hold you accountable and you're not doing the things that you have set out to do, those are your words coming to you to say, hey, remember, this is what you said you wanted. And if you do not follow this path, then you have no right to complain about where you end up. And so the echo is your own voice. It might be me saying it to you, but it is your voice saying, this is what I want for my life. And that's what accountability is. It's important that you learn to hold yourself accountable, because I live my life in such a way where whether anybody's around or not, I'm doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I think that has become sort of a lost art form um, in life these days, because if we just had more people doing the right thing, no matter if people are present or not, our culture and our society would be in a much more positive place. So I live my life like there are cameras on me at all times, because I want to do what's right when people are around, and I want to do what's right when people are not around. That's part of the internal credibility. It's key number 4 in the Moran family's 10 keys to a great life. If you know what's right, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that you understand that about accountability. It starts, like many, if not all of these things, with you. Go ahead, honey.
Well, you also have to keep in mind, if you're coming to me, for instance, and you're asking what I would do in a situation, or what what I have done in a situation, I'm giving you my own experience and what my own coach put me through,
Sure.
because she's just as brass as I am with me, because that's how I respond. It's what I connect with. I want to be told, as hard as it can be, I want to be told. But here's the difference. She has my permission. So if you're coming to me and you're asking me to help you, and you're asking me to give you advice on something or coach you through something, you've just given me permission to tell you what I would do and how I would do it. If that's not something you can deal with, I'm not the one to hold you accountable.
Well, let me push back on you a little bit there, because we're new, into that side of things. It's incumbent upon a coach, and you can't do this until you develop rapport. It's incumbent upon a coach to begin to understand what actually motivates the player and how do you deliver the message, because you can't necessarily deliver like parenting kids. You can't deliver the same message to each kid
And I agree
and
with
get
you.
effective results. So as we do that, if people are giving you permission to operate in one particular way, it's important for you both to have an understanding that until you actually develop rapport, there needs to be an added level of grace so that you guys can move through the conversation.
Well, what I'm getting at is, we're not coaching you just based out of, I'm not giving you textbook. I'm not giving you what another therapist might have given you, or another pastor might have given you. I'm giving you out of my own personal experience. This is what I went through. This is how I did it. This is what my coach put me through. And if those things work for you, great. Then it's my job to hold you accountable to what you're asking me for. If, however, that's not what you're coming to me for, that needs to be established up front, because I won't be the one to hold you accountable. If you're just asking for thoughts and opinions, I can do that too. But that's not accountability. So I want people to understand the difference between asking someone to, what their opinion is on what you're doing. For example, your workouts. If you were to just talk to somebody and they were to just openly give you opinion on your workout, but you're pretty rigid on what you do. You stick to a certain way and you're doing something and you go back to that person and say, "Hey, just curious because I switched something up. What do you think?" Their opinion is what you're asking for. If you were switching it up and you were saying, "Hey, I need you to spot me on this and make sure that I'm doing everything the way I'm supposed to be doing." So they do that. And then a few days later, they see you doing it by yourself and you're not doing it the same way you were doing the first time. They're going to come up and say, "Hey, that's not right. We're going to do this." That's holding you accountable to the form or the set that you were supposed to do. There's a difference between an opinion and an accountability, and that people need to understand that, because some people will say, "Well, I want you to hold me accountable. I've done this. I'm guilty. Quincy, I want you to hold me accountable on my diet." And the minute I open the freezer and Quincy says, "Are you supposed to be eating that?" I don't care. I want it. I'm going to eat it. You're not holding me accountable. You're just reminding me, "Are you supposed to be doing that?" It's now my choice.
Well, I know what you're trying to get through in your example, and no disrespect, but I don't think it meets the criteria, because unless you establish rapport and build trust with someone, they can't hold you accountable.
Fair.
Because you don't, like, if anybody at the gym was to try and hold me accountable to something and I don't know them.
I'm saying, like, if it was your gym partner, that's
okay. Well, that
I missed that part. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's different. And like with PJ, we had to develop a trust with each other, because people aren't going to hold you accountable. It's not going to make a difference if it's not somebody that has credibility with you and someone you trust to speak into your life.
Agreed.
So that's the caveat. It sounds like you missed, it's not just a random person, but
yeah, that's the point. It can't just be anybody. It has to be somebody.
And so with
that you value and you trust.
Yeah, and with you in the emails and what people are asking, they can only ask for your opinion right now, because you don't have an established level of trust and rapport with that person. So
that's my point, though. I'm not the one to hold you accountable.
Okay.
I'm not the one to hold you accountable for what you do or how you do it. I'm giving you my opinion and my experience on what I've done and what I've been through. So any frustration that comes out of that is based on what I've been through and what I've done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me, I welcome the frustration. I welcome the uncomfortable areas that come along with it, because that's where you grow.
Mm-hmm.
So in coaching people and coaching guys, I've learned that they're not the only ones learning, because I'm learning. There are sometimes guys tell me something and I just tell them, I say, that is so far above my pay grade. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. Like, I'm just honest with them and say, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to work through this one together, because I don't know what to do. And I want to be that transparent to say, if I can relate it to anything and tell you how I've gotten through, I will. Otherwise, this is uncharted territory and we'll take it together. But there are just times where it's like, I don't know what to say to that. I want to help you fix it. I want to lead you through it. And so what that does is that challenges me as a coach to grow. It challenges the guy being coached or the player to grow as well. And when we work through it, because sometimes it's the guy working out his own issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just facilitating the space to do that. And so then we both grow. And sometimes it's me saying, okay, I'm going to challenge you to do this. Maybe it doesn't work, but I'm going to challenge you to do this. And then we are going to get back together and see how this works. And then sometimes just being very candid and transparent, sometimes I've just got to pray about it and say, dude, I don't know what to tell you. But I will pray about it, and I'll seek God's heart to see if I get any kind of understanding on how I can help you. Now, what we do know is that when these guys are going through things, they may not tell you everything until you develop the right sense of trust and rapport, where it's like, hey, I screwed this whole thing up. This is where I'm at. They're not like withholding any information that might make them look in a negative way. Not that I'm going to hold it against them, because it's like, hey, let's get all the cards on the table. But that is the beauty, because like when PJ trained me, I'm very confident in saying there are things that my body did that other people's body did not do. So that caused her to have to
change it.
elevate her game. And so that's the beauty of this. Maybe we haven't gone through exactly what you have in your relationship. What we try to do is go back and look and say, well, here are the things that we have gone through, and how can this be relatable? And if it's not, okay, let's see what we can do in a logical sense and an emotional sense to better understand what's going on and then move it forward. And that's like where the guide to a great marriage, how is that born? That's us reviewing our 25 years of marriage and saying, what are like the top 5 pieces of advice that we would give to somebody that's pre-married, a newlywed, or starting their relationship over? And it's all experience based. It's like in the medical field, it's clinically trialed. So you have actual evidence to go on that X equals Y, or however that terminology goes. And so when it comes to accountability, people you don't trust are not going to hold you accountable. A Facebook follower or an Instagram follower or somebody on X or whatever, they're not going to hold you accountable.
No, but there, again, it has to be someone that you trust, but you also have to be honest.
But you can't be honest with someone externally if you're not honest with yourself.
No, and I agree with you. I'm just, me and Rita had probably had 3 conversations where if I'm not willing to go to the bottom of the iceberg, if I'm not willing to see what's at the bottom of everything, then this is as far as we go, because I'm not willing to allow myself to really deep dive into the issue that's my own, had nothing to do with you. It affected our marriage, but it wasn't you, it was me.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't willing to deep dive into those things and figure out why I had the insecurities that I had, why I had the fears that I had, why I reacted the way that I did, why certain things affected me, why did the way your best friend treated his wife affect me so horribly? Why was that such an offense to me when it's not even my marriage? It has nothing to do with me. But it bothered me to the point of I can't be around people. If you're not willing to get to the bottom of that, Rita says, then this is as far as we go. And you can, I'll see you when you need me, but that's about as far as we're going to get.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't willing to put the effort in. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to dig underneath there because I was afraid of what I was going to find.
Well, and I think it's important that when we do the episode dedicated to baggage, that we parallel that to the iceberg conversation. I would love to get Coach Rita on to talk about the iceberg, and what that looks like. But if we can't, we'll endeavor that together.
But that's what I'm getting at, is it has to be, I had to fully give trust to Rita. Now, mind you, I know Rita. I love Rita. I can trust her. So I had no problem saying, okay, let's go after the iceberg. Let's see what's in there. People don't know us. It takes a while to get to know us and to trust us. And I understand all of that. But at the same time, if you're going to get into this and you're not, and you already know you are not willing to go, you're only going to go this far and you're not going any further. Okay. That's something we need to know. That's something that needs to be looked at Because if you're not going to trust us to go beyond that, who do you trust?
Well,
Where do we go with that?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing because, we've all been burned. So,
Agreed.
So, take the time to build the trust. And that's why, before we know it, we're going to be face to face on FaceTime or whatever it is with many of these couples. And we're going to start to build trust. We can do that with you because the show is still at a point where you get direct access to us. And I'm happy for that because it means that we can help people directly, which we are going to continue to do to the best of our ability when the platform is bigger than we're used to. But my endeavor is for you to look at the bill of goods and what you bought, and every box is checked. That's the way I live my life. That's the way I live my life in my relationship with you. As I want you to get what you bought. I want you to get what you paid for, if you know what I'm saying. And I do the same with my kids. I do the same with my profession to the best of my ability. I have blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. But that's what you get. That's what you get here. And I used to think there was a time in my life when it came to this podcast where I felt like it wasn't as credible as other podcasts that had 1 million followers until a listener told me, a listener was like, no, man, it's more meaningful coming from you because you're not this unrelatable millionaire that's out there doing X, Y, and Z. You are a regular guy just like me. And I was like, well, shoot, man, I didn't think about that. But that was in a time where my credibility was linked to my financial status because I thought that's what it was supposed to be. Like I use that criteria to hold myself back. And so it was after he told me that, and then my cousin was like, hey, Quincy, what if Jesus would have waited to start his ministry and, until he had enough money to do it? And I was like, ow, ow. It was so profound. She's like, his credibility, he didn't rely on his pocketbook to be his credibility. And I'm not an influencer who's going to teach you how to go make millions of dollars. That's not my role. My role is to teach you how to become famous in your family. And that's going to cost you time and effort. And at some point, it might cost you some money. But it'll be money well spent because it'll be spent on what you're doing in your life that adds value to your family and to your family experience. So that's all for this episode.
Agreed.
You good there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, hey, don't forget, if you want to know how, let's say that you've heard something in here that helps you and you're like, oh man, that really helped me. Thank you, Quincy. How could I ever repay you? Well, let me tell you. You can go to quincymoran.com/apparel and you can pick up a shirt. Why? Because I'm going to make $1 million? No, I don't make that much money off the shirts. It's less about making any money, and it's more about getting the brand out there for other people to see where you live. Because when you go to the gym and you're walking around with a podcast shirt on, a lot of times people are listening to music, to books, or podcasts. And you never know what someone else is going through. So if you're out there repping the brand, then you may be affecting someone's life and you don't even know it. They may be in a hard spot in their marriage. They may be searching for answers and they're not sure who to go through. And so when you wear this to the gym or the grocery store or an airplane, etc., people are going to look at it and they're going to go, I wonder what that's about. And then they're going to go check it out. And what that does is help myself. It helps Jeanne broaden this platform so that we can positively impact more marriages, more families, and positively impact culture. So that is what I would love for you to do. If this show is helping you, share the show with people you know and then buy the gear and wear it. Buy it for somebody else. Look, there's a cool shirt. You see that? The Notorious Hustlemania. Yes, it rips off Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania. But who doesn't want to be more like Hulk Hogan, brother? Say your prayers and eat your vitamins.
No.
But go check it out. It's at quincymoran.com/apparel. Be sure to email me, quincy@mvsmpodcast.com, because the guide to a great marriage is coming out in 2025. And I want to let you know when it's coming so that you can get it and download it and get yourself on a greater path in your relationship. So without further ado, that is the show. She is Jeanne Moran. I am Quincy Moran, a.k.a. the Cute Dog. And this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast. The podcast.